All right, here we go. Hello, welcome, and thank you for being here. My name is Kerry Upton. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the school district, managing all things facilities. We appreciate you being here. This is always, just an important step of what we're doing and how we're sort of moving along and improving our facilities here to educate our students. So this is, there's a whole lot of work that happened to get to this point, and there'll be a lot of work that comes after this. But this is a very important moment, so we really thank you for being here. Before I introduce our architects to talk and other people to sort of give you an idea of where we are, just to say what we're doing is we're reviewing the campus plan that we've developed here for Franklin. It's gone through many emendations to get to this point. It is a long-term plan. It is a 15-year or more how we get there, but it is based on the questions of what facilities do we need to educate students now and for the next 20, 25, 30 years. So it really is based on that. We work with our educators to ask that question. But before I bring the architects on, Mr. Aaron, will you get up and just speak for just a moment about the importance and where we are with this process.
So thank you, welcome. My name is Aaron. I'm the school principal currently here, and I will be here for the next 10 years or so. So I'm definitely invested, but this is really an important, when you look at education and you look at the 21st century learner, and you think of the confined spaces that we have right now in classrooms, it's really important to think ahead and look at the future, like what our students will need in order to have innovative classrooms that are much larger, there's flexibility in how they're creating projects. It's not like when we were kids and drill and deal, like what's 6 times 6, 9 times 9, and memorizing stuff. Now kids have to think and they have to create and they have to collaborate. So those are really important aspects of teaching and learning. And as we get more advanced with technology and stuff, kids need access to those things in their classrooms. So the biggest part of this, when we got feedback from our staff and stuff, we're going from classrooms that are about 780 square feet to about 1,200 to 1,300 square feet, which makes a massive difference for what you can do in a classroom when you have a confined space and where you can sit down and, today we're going to sit here in the rug area, and over here we're going to go to our makerspace area. Here we have our calming corner and stuff. We don't have the ability to do all those things right now just because we are in confined spaces. So when you think about this, I really want you to think about what the future is. But please know, from my heart of hearts, and I've been in education now 25 years, things change along the way. So when we look at phase 1, that's probably the most important thing. But thinking of what phase 4 is going to be like in 15, 20 years, I can guarantee you it's going to be very different then from what is proposed now. But the district is obligated to make a long-term plan because that's how these things get started. So keep in mind that those things will change. And every time we have a new phasing, we will bring back another community meeting to talk about how do we want the next phase to be. Because in 10 years from now, that makerspace that may be on that map right now may not be as viable for what the school needs at that time. So just keep that in mind when we're going through this. As we go through the process and you go home tomorrow or something, if you have questions, feel free to call, stop by my office. I'm happy to talk through this. We've met with our staff. Our staff has huge buy-in. I have one of our teacher representatives here. She can speak about it as well. But it's really, they are looking at the future of the kids in this community. On another hand, I will say Franklin is one of the oldest schools here, and we need some updates. We really do. We run a very excellent program here, but our buildings are old, and we need some updates. We have older portables. We have buildings that haven't been touched in a very long time. So it is time to really think about this. So that's it.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Good start. Thank you very much. So to present the plan, we have DSK Architects and Jeff Fuller and Abby will. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thanks all for coming. And I'd like to kind of repeat something before we start that Aaron said. Things will change, and we even know from getting a roster schedule the way that the classes were laid out last year is different from even today. But again, if we don't take the time to do that and organize the site, You know, you have just haphazard placement. That's why, you know, in the late 90s when we needed portables, they just were where space was available, but it is not a very organized campus when you do that. There's no hierarchy. People don't know where to go. So it's important to lay the groundwork. Again, the master plan and planning has to do with one of what my colleague says, which I think is a great line, is like we're just setting the table. We don't know what food is being served, but so when you look at some of these images and things like that, it's not, well, the building should have less windows or more windows, or it should have more overhangs. It's really not about that. It's where the buildings are being placed and how the wrapper makes sense. Like how is the campus going to be organized? So just want to say that before we get started. We have quite a few slides. I'm going to go through this. I realize some people have seen this before, some have not. The first few slides are about kind of where we've been, and then I'll let Abby and others kind of take over. So this is an aerial of the site, and you can see down here Montana and Idaho down here. So this is how it currently exists from up above. And again, the education spec, something developed by the district and a lot of experts within and outside the district on what today's facilities need. So this book was produced in 2019, and it's been adopted by the board. And so this is a guideline for how spaces should be on campuses. Again, it's an ideal, so some things you know, are plus and minus, but there are some minimums set by the state that we have to adhere by. Again, the book is available, it's on the website, and you can see what these requirements are that kind of start to drive the size of the building and locations also. Again, a slide just showing that this has been going on for a while, and our firm has been involved with this campus for about 5 years. So we know the building well, and we buildings well in the site. And so you can see this is an example of some of the meetings we've had. Going back to 2020, there's been community meetings for leadership. We've met with teachers, we've met with principals, PTA, and you can kind of see through all the different years of things that have happened. We'll kind of explain why this process has taken a while to get us here today. In some of these meetings, again, this is just an example. There's a lot of them that have gone into the site assessment, again, which is available on the district's website. But when we go into the master plan, there are a lot of things that go into it that may or may not be seen by everybody. Adjacencies. What makes sense here? Something. Should we have more adult eyes on the kids? Or where should the gym be located, or the MPR be located? And you know, one of these exercises that we did in activities of this workshop was like, where are the most important things? You kind of see up here, critical, high, normal, low. So these were you know, things that we talked to with the user groups, and just to see where they were coming from. Before we started kind of meeting with them more in detail, what things were important? We looked at security, classroom improvements, and they kind of ranked them. Again, this was the adjacency we talked about. And he looks a little bit scattered, but there is some kind of you know, movement with this. And you can kind of see too, we even talk about, you know, where the louder spaces want to be, where's the quieter. And so these all start to get formulated when we start to make a plan. Do we get all these ideals in there? These things, you know, if something has to move because all these things can't happen, what's the priorities? And that's what we go to work with back with the user groups. Again, what came out of some of these are, you know, some of the strengths of the existing, the existing campus. You know, there's a lot of murals around the walls, around the handball walls, around buildings. These are things that were identified from a lot of the meetings and users that we, you know, talked with. And so large field, play spaces, and so you can kind of read through this, and again, it's on the website. But again, these were things we have to go through before you can start putting, you know, pencil to paper, so to speak. Again, then we start to identify, you know, not just where the buildings are, but how do they meet what the state requires in terms of size, and how do they compare with the education specs that were developed, like I said, by the district in 2019. So you can kind of see here, the blue is undersized teaching stations. So that's pretty much all the buildings. And then in terms of the special education, and so you can see kind of where they are, but I think all but this kindergarten are undersized. So again, we have to go through these things to know what can stay and, you know, what needs to be looked at a little bit closer. And you can see some of the summaries here about the number of teaching stations and how many we have, how many are needed, and where's the deficiency. Again, here's another little summary, but you can kind of see what's going on here. It's a little bit dark blue, but what we analyzed is at specs what's required in here. And so the best way to kind of see that is the darker blue is what we have today, and the outline is what we need. So you can see they're pretty much all deficient in terms of size. And as Aaron said before, teaching is different. It's not just about numbers. Oh, we have 850, that's close enough. It's also the size and configuration of the space, and we're using it differently to do project-based learning, not like all of us tonight facing forward and looking at someone. So the space is very important, not just the square footage, but the configuration.
I would add to that that the state standard for classroom size is 960 square feet. You might notice that none of these are 960 square feet. And our ed specs, one of the things and of course you have to also realize that that 960 square foot standard was probably created by the fire marshal about 70 years ago, because after you go over 960 you have to have 2 doors. So it's like, it's not based on education. It's never based on education. So what we did with our ed specs was really took a deep look, and the question about the classroom size of it needing to be bigger just to do what we do really sort of has driven this this idea.
Thank you. And we can look at some of the other ones. Same type of rationale through here, like this is how big the library is versus this is how big the ed specs say they would like it to be. And again, libraries are being used very differently. This is just one example, but you can look at it again for multi-purpose room, the cafe, things like that. And we look at other special spaces, outdoor spaces as well. And again, like I said, we started in 2020, and we had several different schemes, not all of them are even here, where we looked at where the buildings would go, the makerspace buildings, and so it's just iterations. This is just the process, and again, meeting with different user groups, and to finally get into a culminated plan that was kind of accepted by others.
Can I just interject really quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Like the library, for instance, we were showing right back. Libraries are supposed to be, currently they should be multimedia centers, right? So what we do, we have a separate computer lab in a different room, and a library that just holds our books. Think ahead like 10, 15 years, where there's going to be digitalized books and stuff, and we're going to have to we have to come up with the time. So that's why it's important to look at like what the specs are saying, because we can do so much more in creating a multimedia center that has books available as well than just having a small library with books and then a separate computer lab. So.
And again, the iterations went into 21 as well. The different plans, again, looking at the field. And again, there are some requirements that we need. How does the fire department know the fires? There are some things that aren't as literal on there. I guess this one shows the road. And again, we can't forget about, and we'll talk about this later, about the historical nature of the front admin building. So there are things that we can touch, so to speak, and things we don't want to, and things we really can't. And this was the April 21 plan that was presented to the Board of Education, and this is what it looked like previously until we got started again. And it does kind of show the auditorium, music room, some more classrooms here, cafe, kitchen here, existing parking, courts down here, the makerspace building, which was drawn and approved by the state architect, and then 2-story classroom buildings, so pretty much a classroom here, a library on the back of the admin and support and some flex, and then the soccer field in green and track field. And then here's just the second story, so you can see the classrooms on top of that and on top of here. Yeah. And then we were identified, as Aaron was saying before, it's a groundwork for how we lay out the plans and what's coming. That doesn't mean by the time we get to phase 4, it'd be great if it was that way, but there's so many changes, it might be altered by that point. The one thing that we do know is phase 1. So we were asked to identify, well, what kinds of projects make sense to do first? And there's a lot that goes into that as well. Like where are the kids going to intern? If you're touching a space, be it portables, or where are those kids going? And so it was discussed, and the board gave direction, to have the first project be the makerspace building and playfield improvements. So that was what we were charged to do, and that's what we did. And let's see, is this really take a
So I will take you through the rest of the presentation. Thank you, Jeff. So this, as Jeff was saying, we were given the approval to design the makerspace and the play field and yard improvements project for the campus. So we did that throughout the year of 2021 into 2022, and then in December of 2022 we had a CEQA community meeting, and I see some familiar faces, I know some of you were at that. And at that meeting we presented a slightly revised campus master plan, taking out the preschool and putting in more TK classrooms, as that became a state mandate by Governor Newsom. And then also showing closer to what it would be at a 10 to 15 year plan. And we presented the makerspace project, and we also presented, or I should say Andrew and Julian they presented the HRI and CEQA. So the makerspace project, we did submit this to DSA, and we did get DSA approval on this project, so the plans are ready and it could be built. So these are just some images to show you what that project was.
I just want acronym definitions.
Oh, DSA, Division of the State Architect, who we have to submit all of our drawings to. They have to review and approve the project for fire, life safety, structural safety, and access compliance.
And that's state level.
State level, yes.
And then HFI.
HRI is Historical Resources Inventory. So that was the historical report that Andrew's team put together. Sorry, that's a good question. So these are just some more images of floor plan. Sorry. Some other renderings of the space, and that's the field improvements as well. And at the same time at this meeting, Andrew presented historic research. Do you want to come up and say a few words?
My name is Andrew. I'm from Architectural Resources Group with Historic Preservation Consultants. I'll spend the next just a couple of minutes talking about historic resource considerations on this campus. So just to give a little bit of background, back in 2021, 2022, our firm completed the HRI, the Historic Resource Inventory of this campus. The purpose of the HRI was to evaluate the existing buildings and improvements and determine whether anything appeared to be historically significant. And it's really just an important informational tool to identify opportunities of constrained opportunity moving forward. So this was done to comply with the board policy that was adopted back in 2021. The board policy requires the district to consider potential impacts to historic resources on its campuses whenever there's a master plan or other large capital project proposed. So all that said, we did our assessment. We looked at everything on the campus, all of the buildings. We even looked at the portables, which are definitely not historic, landscaping, etc.
They're about to
And from our assessment, so out of everything on this campus, we found one building to be historically significant, and that's the front building, Building B, or the administration building. It's a large two-story building that was constructed in the 1930s at the front of the campus. So the building was originally constructed in 1937 during the Great Depression. It was expanded, the second story was added in 1952. And the architect for both the original design and the addition was a very prominent Los Angeles firm called Marsh, Smith & Howell. They did a number of major projects for the school district here in Santa Monica, as well as elsewhere throughout the Southern California region. North of the building, as you're approaching from Montana Avenue, which creates a formal entrance to the campus and was part of the original design. So all that said, nothing else on the campus, none of the other buildings, none of the other portables, nothing else, the parking lots, anything like that. Nothing like that was historically significant. It really just comes down to the front building and the front landscape.
I have a question. I keep hearing the word potential historical. Is it for sure historical, like we can't touch it, or is there something that's being investigated? Like, can you clarify?
Yeah, that's a good question. So potential just refers to the fact that it was identified in a formal evaluation but was not officially listed. So, you know, in our professional opinion, the building is eligible for listing in the local register and the state register, but the district has not formally, you know, nominated the building. So for purposes of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, a potential resource and a designated resource are treated the same. It gets a little bit sticky with the language and stuff like that, but for all intents and purposes, it is a historical resource.
So, the original image you showed us had a further structure at the back. So the design itself, you know, the campus, the original Marshall Smith and Carl design has already been altered and touched. And I mean, that was, you know, does that affect this designation or potential application for designation?
So the photo here, this was actually a rendering that was prepared, yes, in 1935. And it's a little different than what you see today. So it was when, this is what they originally envisioned. When the building was constructed in 37, it only consisted of that front portion. And it was one story when it was constructed in the 30s. The second story was added in 1952, but it was the same architects working in the same style, and they were very sensitive to the original design of the building. So that's how we arrived at our conclusion.
In terms of a review determining the finality of whether or not it is a historic building, is it only on the district that would submit for that request for designation, or I'm showing my ignorance about Santa Monica government right now, is that also something that residents would possibly be able to do?
That's a good question. I'm actually not entirely sure what the designation process currently is for the city of Santa Monica. I could direct you to staff that administer the program if you're interested. If I answer your question.
Or I should just probably look at the internet.
I mean, it's probably on there too.
Carrie might my understanding is that locally, someone can bring something to the Landmarks Commission and ask for it to be locally designated, someone other than the owner. It can be done.
What about
I
an
don't
objection?
like it.
What about an objection to a designation? How does that work?
Well, mostly.
Because it's only eligible at this point.
Right. If it is not landmarked yet, then it becomes part of the California Environmental Quality Act and CEQA. And as the lead agency, the district can determine for a number of very good reasons that, you know, it might need to be removed. But that is a much steeper hill to climb for a building that is already potentially a resource. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means that it is more of a thing, and it's going to be a more interesting thing with our community.
I also have a question. Since the second story was built in 1952, I know my understanding from what you said is that it was the same architect firm and they tried to have the same design. But as you know, in Santa Monica, we have many old buildings, and when they're remodeled, a lot of people keep the old part of the building, but then go a little more modern and different. So my question is, is it possible, to somehow keep the first floor of the building with this historic design and do something with the second floor and build it out in the back to give more room that way, push it out that way, give more classroom space, which is something you really want, and try to do something in that regard. So we get more bang for our buck, you get more room for your classrooms, you still try to keep, you know, the same design, the original, and we just have brilliant architects that can make it look good, right?
That's an excellent question and a good point. Is you know, in historic preservation planning, the standard that we go by, it's called the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, which is a very long word. But they do allow, they're federal standards that are also used at the state, local levels. And they're used to really evaluate potential interventions to historic buildings. They do allow for change and flexibility. So like you mentioned, if an architect was able to come in and propose an addition or a renovation project that added square footage to the building, perhaps in the back, that is completely within the realm of possibility. With the standards, it's not completely frozen in time.
That's my suggestion.
I will say, and Jeff might support this, is that, you know, everything we do goes through the division of the state architect. The division of the state architect is very much frowning on rehabilitating old buildings significantly, and would require, we pretty much get to a place that the building would be required to be brought up to the current code. And it having been built before what we call the Field Act, which was formed after the 1933 Long Beach earthquake. Us in Long Beach, you know, when that happened, about 95% of the structures in the schools in Santa Monica fell down or were damaged. To bring this building up to code, we lack a lot of the documents and paperwork, I'd say, to do that. It would be a very steep climb.
Well, I have a question right on that point. The thing is, for the children, why isn't it up to code? And, I mean, in my opinion, it should be brought up to code or demolished, really. Because, as you say, you know, we just recently, within the last 2 years, learned about an earthquake fault that goes right along the golf course. It goes practically right up Montana along the golf course, and it's a major earthquake fault. So why wouldn't we want to get rid of this historical building that was built in the ugliest style? Let's be honest. You know, there was.
I will say that's a subjective opinion.
Subjective opinion. But there's, to my mind, nothing that pleasing to the eye, right? It is on an earthquake fault that is substantial.
It's not an earthquake fault. We
It
can talk about that in a moment.
Very close to the one that we learned that ran right by the golf course. And if it's not up to earthquake standards from that 1933, after the 1933 earthquake, I don't understand why we shouldn't do something about that, because you have kids in there. And what if we have another big one? Really?
I'm going to go back to one of your first questions, then I'll talk about something. The requirement is that when we substantially touch any building, it is brought up to the current code. We've not substantially touched this building in a number of years, so it is not meeting the current codes. Another project we're working on, the Mirror Smash Campus, which was built in the 90s. We're having to go back and do some work because there was some water intrusion. That building, even though it was built only 30 years ago, that building we're having to bring up to code, and that's rather substantial work. So it is a challenge. The average age of the school buildings in the district is 70 years old. The average age of our portables is 30 years old. In many ways, we'd love to replace them all. I'm not sure you'd want to pay for replacing them all. The earthquake fault, one of the things we had to do before we built anything here was we actually had to do tests. And we did a whole series of tests along the alleyway. And we did not find the fault, but then they asked us to do another one, and you might have noticed over the summer, in the middle of the field, we dug a big trench and invited the people from the California Department of Geological Service to come in and crawl around in the trench, and we made them sad because we didn't find the fault. So the fault is not on this campus. So there is a requirement you cannot build within 50 feet of a fault, and you do not have, and luckily, we've proven now the fault's not on the
Well, you
campus.
approved it for the alley, and you.
No, we approved it for the whole campus.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
what
It doesn't
about-
run this way, it doesn't run through the campus.
Okay, I'm talking about one that goes from east to west.
There is definitely one someplace around here,
Yes.
east to west, and on various maps, whether it's the California Department of Geological Service or the USGS, they have used a magic marker and drawn it in a couple of places. One of them was right through our campus. We've proven it's not running through the middle of the campus. I can say that. Not much more. Yes, ma'am.
So I'd just like to know a little bit more about the cost involved in keeping this building. Is there like lead remediation? Like what about the wiring, the plumbing, asbestos, etc.? I mean, do you have precedent for keeping a building like this and using it for a use like this?
Yeah, we believe this building is still, I'm going to use a word that engineers, viable is a much better word than the word I was going to use. I would use that word.
Like we all aspire to something.
Yes, that doesn't mean, we know there is lead in the building, we know there's asbestos. We have a very clear idea about those are not impacting health. We know that at one point in the landings in one place there were some PCBs, and we have managed those and we continue to monitor it. So we know that the building is healthy to use, or at least it is not causing any impact to students or faculty that are using it. As far as what it takes to replace a building or to remodel or redo, yes, like we've recently done major modernization on the building. We added air conditioning in it, so we upgraded a lot of electrical. We continue to upgrade parts of it. But yeah, I mean, is the building better? But I will say that there are members of the community who find this historic building significant and important to keep in the community. Hey, I'm just telling you, the conversation has to go both ways, because there are people in the community who feel, yes.
And just one of the aspects, and we're talking about the future learning, and we're talking about these flexible spaces, but you're also talking about preserving something that symbolizes a very different era of learning and a very different feel, that sort of institutional feel. I get it when I walk in there. It takes me right back to my preschool. It takes me right back to a very different time and space in education. And so I'm wondering if you considered what that's saying in particular, keeping that on campus.
That is part of our conversation. Yes, and certain buildings certainly have carry ideas architecturally that might be ideas that we have moved away from and or would like to move away from. And yet in our community, those are the things that they cherish about buildings.
Wait, who cherishes? The community cherishes keeping in place what's here
Yeah,
versus like
changing.
change.
Yeah.
Is that a matter of the vote, of the board vote? Wasn't there a building in Samurai that was a historical building that eventually did not make it?
Okay.
Has there been any precedent to the district or?
Okay. There was a building at Santa Monica High School, aptly named the History Building, that was deemed not to be a historical resource because it had been altered and changed so substantially. It was a building that was built on top of a 1920s foundation after the 1933 earthquake, and it was no longer serving our educational needs, and it would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, to bring up to code. So, in a plan that was very well publicized and discussed for years before, no one made any noise or said anything about it, and then came an election where it suddenly became a thing. And so there was a discussion, but it was already a commitment to the district to remove that. Can the district remove an older building? Yes. I mean, you'll see that things that are historic resources, you'll see that, in the Roosevelt plan, we're planning to remove some things that are part of historic districts. At Grant, we're planning to remove the buildings, but we're keeping other things to maintain and retain the historic district. At this site, we don't have a historic district, we have a historic building. It's a little different. Can it be done? Yes. It is ultimately would be a decision by the Board of Education that would be done as part of the California Environmental Quality Act Environmental Impact Review. they could decide that for educational purposes, for cost, for a number of things. Look at Julian who looked away because I'm trying to think of all the things they can use as reasons, but they can use that as a reason to remove a building. It is a political thing. And in this community, it will be a political thing. And the board always wants to go from a place of consensus. Yes?
So I just have a question based on this new movement of the kindergarten classes to the other end. And it really, to me, fits in with what we want to do with the main building. Because the main building is on a space where we have so much more room, okay? If we are shoving all of the kindergarten and preschoolers to the other end of the campus, that is the one place in the campus where people get dropped off, kids get dropped off, okay? If we use this main building on Montana to enlarge the kindergarten space, do something with it, make more classrooms on this side of the school also, you're going to obviate all this traffic problem, because we're going to have a huge traffic problem for dropping off kids in one location. So that's why, and I think it's bad for the kids, I think it's dangerous for the kids, it causes traffic issues with the alley. But if we talk about doing something or enlarging this original building, because you have so much space there that is not really being utilized correctly. If you can enlarge that, enlarge the second floor, do something like that, you could probably keep those kindergarten kids or preschoolers or somebody, whoever you want. You can use more area of the school to have children. You're going to get rid of a lot of traffic problems, because I don't know if you folks have done a traffic survey, because I'm sure we're going to hear about that, because I think it's going to be a huge issue with the drop-off. I really do.
Can't pick up.
We haven't gone through our whole plan yet.
No, we haven't.
Let us go through our whole plan, talk about the entire plan and some of the benefits of it before we continue this part of the conversation, unless you have anything left to say.
I think there's one more slide I can go very quickly.
Go.
Very quickly.
Yeah, but I want to push on to the rest of the plan, please.
Cliff Notes version of this. So in addition to evaluating where the historical resources are on campus, we did look at the proposed master plan to evaluate whether there would be any impacts to historical resources on campus as proposed. The short answer to that is no. The proposed master plan, as you can see in the presentation and on the boards over there, it leaves the original building intact, that historic building intact. And I should mention here that interior spaces within that admin building were not identified as historically significant. It's really the envelope of the building. And it's really how it's presented from the street from Montana Avenue. So in a nutshell, without going too deep into the weeds of CEQA and all that stuff, we did look at the project. We did evaluate how it related to the historic building, and in our professional opinion, there were no environmental impacts to the historical building under CEQA.
Oh, CEQA. Are you going to talk about CEQA?
I will.
It's
At
Julian.
the December 2022 meeting, we talked about CEQA, and Julian's here to give you a little update.
I'll keep this very quick. My name is Julian Caput. I work for the district. I recognize some of you from various meetings we've had here before. So for the first of all, CEQA. It is the California Environmental Quality Act. So that's another acronym. This one to my life. But anyway, the main purpose of CEQA is actually to disclose to the decision makers and to the public any potential significant impacts, adverse change that could result as a result of implementation of the project. That includes construction as well as operation. That would reduce or eliminate those adverse effects. And it also gives the main reason, or the environmentally clears the project for district approval. So we prepared an environmental, a mitigated negative declaration for the previous project. It studied all aspects of the project, from visual resources, air quality during construction, historic resources, as Andrew said, geological, as well as hazardous materials, developed mitigation measures, determined that development and implementation and operation of the master plan would not have any significant adverse effect on the environment. Once the master plan was pulled, that document was also shelved, and it is going to remain shelved, and we are going to bring on the same team, because it makes sense, but the same team is going to prepare a completely new document, starting with an initial study to determine the potential impacts and mitigation measures and so forth for this. But so we're not going to just pull up the old document, dust it off, and change a few words. It will be a completely new study. As part of that process, the document that is produced will be released for a minimum 30-day public review period. We assume at this point that it will also be a mitigated negative declaration, just because it's similar enough in scope that there's not going to be any substantial differences. And that document will be released for a 30-day public review period. The district will hold another public meeting on that, and then when after that review period, there'll be a chance to submit comments, and those comments will be responded to as part of that document and become part of what's going to be the final mitigated impact that we'll get a chance to adopt. So that's the secret process. If anybody has any questions about that, happy to answer. I always get off easy.
Thank you, Julian. So to wrap up where we were in December of 2022, this was the master plan you presented at that CEQA meeting. And at that meeting, it was determined that we needed to come back to this master plan and revise it to accommodate the current campus needs, enrollment, and post-COVID services. Because this master plan was developed during COVID, and as we all know, everything changed after that. So we went back to the drawing board a little bit, but with all the knowledge that we had learned previously and all the meetings we'd had with PTA and teachers and the principal and more meetings with Aaron, and we came up with more iterations and refinement. These are just some of the ones we looked at, and we ended with this proposed master plan that a lot of you have seen at this point, but I'll walk you guys kind of through this. So this master plan moves the parking lot all the way up into the satellite campus. So it really brings all the students onto the main campus and allows teaching to happen here and not have to cross the alley. It also then expands the parking lot and allows for approximately 44 spaces. Right now, it's the current parking lot is at 30 spaces, I believe. It still maintains the main building, but all of the first floor becomes administration and support. So it'd be an interior renovation of that new building. You have a new 2-story classroom building along the alley here with 11 classrooms on the first floor and then 11 on the second floor, restrooms, elevators, stairs, all the necessary storage spaces. They are 1,200 square foot classrooms per the ed specs. In the center of campus is a new makerspace building, similar to what we had designed previously at this point. We like what we designed, but that's always subject to change. The auditorium up here where we are in is now the cafeteria, but it will get renovated into an auditorium. Possibly at that phase, it could be new if there's funding and we want to make it a new building, and there's potential to do that there. And in between, you have, an outdoor performance area, and then music, flex, science, art, and a library building. This would all be one building, but kind of separated to show the different uses in there. It would open up into more outdoor classrooms and book garden, and then down here, the new kitchen cafe with indoor-outdoor dining. That's adjacent to the big play yard, U10 soccer field, outdoor play area. And then, yes, as we discussed earlier, TK and K complex down here. And, you know, down here on the corner of Idaho and the alley, and they would have their own enclosed play yard per state requirements. And then the second floor, more interior renovation of the second floor. You'd have another classroom up there, some teaching spaces, and then the two-story bar building along the alley. Now this is all very diagrammatic. We haven't designed any of these spaces at this point. As you can see from our renderings and what you'll see next, it looks designed, but it's not. There's definitely much more development to go into this, and much more discussion with the site and the site committee and Aaron to figure out at each phase what the school needs and are and how we can accommodate it at that time. So I think you guys all got a pretty good look at the renderings, and I know we're getting close on time, so I'm just going to kind of flip through these. They actually, I think, look better printed than on the screen. But what I want to get to is explain the phasing. So, this is your existing campus. So phase 1A would be demo of the field and the parking lot and one of the basketball courts. It would be building the new TKK complex and a temporary parking lot and temporary field. And then, after that is complete, and that would just be to get through a school year, so you aren't without a field or parking in a school year. And then you would demo the field and parking, the temporary, and demo the satellite building, because all of the students have moved over into the new TKK yard. And you would build the new U10 soccer field and parking lot. And that would complete phase 1. Then phase 2 would be demo of the current building F along the alley and the handball walls and some other play equipment. And at that time, 3 classrooms. As it sits today, 3 classrooms would need to be reassigned. Obviously, that will have to be looked at again once this phase comes up, and maybe there won't be as many classrooms that need to be reassigned, as we know that classroom assignments change year to year. And then the new 2-story classroom building would be built, and you virtually have all of your new classrooms. There's still one that needs to be renovated in the 2-story building, but you really have enough spaces for all of the students to learn in new 1,200 square foot spaces.
Can you share with everyone the approximate timeline we're looking at for phase 1 to start, just so?
I'll let Carrie answer that.
Okay. If we move right along and we pass a November 24 bond measure, then I think that we would begin construction on this in the summer of 26. We think that the construction of this is about 1.5 years, I think, about 18 months. So we'd be able to move into this, the TK summer of hopefully January of 28. We might be able to do it a little faster than that, but that's what our goal right now is. Then we probably would get to the bar building at the next bond, which would be sometime in 2031. Yes, this is a 15-year plan or more.
When you referenced 1A and 1B year, that's the same bond, right?
It's the same
So
thing.
even when there's a stop and work.
So
because the
we
school
get
year-
to, back up one, we get to here by the end of this month.
Okay.
That's what I think, this is how far I think we can get on the first one. And we'll be doing work at every other campus in the district, so.
Is the timeline so long because of the work that's happening at other sites?
The timeline has a little bit to do with how much work we're doing everywhere else. You know, already you're going to be on the second row of the bond because we didn't get any of this resolved. So, you know, if we don't get this resolved, it'll push you farther in there. A lot of the question is, right now we've been tending to go out for bonds every 6 years. And if we decide to accelerate that and go we can only go in even years, so if we went in 28 as opposed to waiting for 30, then potentially that speeds everything up. It's just, or you know, it's about how much can we go out for, how much will the voters tackle at one moment, and how often we can go out is the challenge. Just to say, we have a lot of work to do across the district. As I said, our buildings are old, this district did very little work on their buildings from 1978 until 2008, like almost none, except adding some portables. And so we're catching up. We're playing catch up completely. So to bring our whole district up to where it needs to be, it's going to take a number of years and lots of money.
Can you repeat what's the bond measure vote timing, and then?
We're looking at going out in November of 2024, so it would be on the November election. If the board chooses to put that on the ballot in July, they'll vote in July, but they'll put it on the ballot. We'll see what happens then.
Sorry, when is the start date if the measure is passed in November 2024?
If it's passed in November of 24, then we can start construction as early as January, and we'll have a few projects starting in January. We probably will be in construction in 9 different campuses in the summer of 25, and which is why this one sort of is moving to summer of 26. We really can't be in construction on all 14 campuses, 12 campuses in Santa Monica.
The start would be summer 26.
I think so. This is where we are right now.
Great.
Yeah.
And can you repeat what you said for phase 2?
Phase 2, I think, would be probably starting in either 30 or 31.
When would the vote be?
Oh, probably, well, that's a choice. If we stay on our 6-year cycle, because we've gone out and, we went out in 2006, 2012, 2018, 2024, then the next bond measure would be in 2030, which means we wouldn't start until 2031 or 2032 with this construction. If we decided to only go in 4 years and come back in 2028, then we could get going a little faster. And that depends on just on our community and the voters and how much they want to say yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I just ask about the allocation of those bond funds between all these different projects? Is it sort of the first come, first served type deal?
No, the board approves, a bond list, which has projects, and, right now the emphasis on the next bond is very much elementary and middle schools. And so all of our older elementary schools, the ones that were mostly built after the Long Beach earthquake, all of them are going to have significant projects. And then what project it is and where it is, it depends a whole lot on this type of phasing, because we still have to operate school. We don't have any plan where we take all the kids off the school. Some people say, well, why don't you just take all the kids off for 2 years, tear the whole thing down and rebuild a new one. That's a great idea, unless you have kids who suddenly are taken away from your school and shoved over across town to another school and broken up. It's not a popular idea. So we're working, we're rebuilding the plane as we're flying. But that means we try to do it really strategically. That's where this is a very strategic move. It allows us, and it doesn't allow, we don't lose that many classrooms while we do it. And then the next phase is a strategic move because we can still have a lot of school. The problem is, that means we keep a whole bunch of bungalows that we'd like to get rid of next year. And we'll probably be talking about some refurbishing of those bungalows, where some schools were able to, in the first phase, take out all of the bungalows, but others like this, we're just gonna have to build our way into it. And that's also, even if we said, hey, let's tear down the main building, that main building holds a lot of things, so we have to create some space somewhere before we can tear down the main building.
We can move admin across the city.
Just kidding.
Oh, come on, we need Betty to be as close as she can be.
We love Betty. Seriously, I do. I first want to say thanks for all you do. I know this process is hard and opinions are hard, so appreciate that. One of the realizations I had was that, and this is more of an observation, but by bringing the TKK down, that is the focus of the school, right? Like that's the heart of the school, because they're going to live the next 6+ years and they'll get the benefits. So I think that's a really nice thing. My question is, the building, the potential historical, what phase is that? Because as we've talked about, just gotta get the ball rolling, or whatever things we've said to get the first phase done. What phase does that fall into play? Because that's when, like, for me, I know I'll get more vocal, because then I want the building to come down. So is that like 20 years from now, so that I'm just gonna be excited for TKK, and then 20 years I'll get excited for the other?
We're excited the whole time.
No, I'm super excited. What I'm getting at is like phase 4 is when,
Okay,
to your point.
let's let Abby finish the phases, and then we can go deeper into the
Okay,
chat.
thank
Okay?
you.
Because Abby's almost done. No, Abby's almost done, just let her finish the phasing, and then we can have a deeper chat.
So we have the 2-story built, and all the kids virtually have a new classroom. And then the entire middle of campus, portables, modular buildings, can all go away. And a new makerspace kitchen cafe can be built.
That's phase 3?
It's phase 3. That's the build of phase 3.
So that's like a third bond.
Yep.
Yes?
Yep. And then most likely another bond to.
You could run out of money.
Which is every 6 years, so every 6 times.
Each one has, each phase would need a bond.
So the third one would be 6
Yes.
times 3 is 18.
And then it's phase 4, that the main building, you are
So,
correct.
24 years. 6 times 4 is 24, yeah. So 24 years when this building possibly will get discussed again.
That is the current
We'll
phase.
get, right now we'll get modernized. Right now we don't have a plan to demolish that building.
Is there a reason, I don't know, follow piggybacking, like why we decided to do it in this order versus another order?
Yeah.
Does it make
Sure.
sense? It makes sense.
It allows us, go ahead, Abby, go.
Yeah, it allows us to move students into an open area first, so that we aren't down too many classrooms during a phase. Because as Carrie said, to build this will take 18 months. So if we were to demo this building at any point, we'd have to make sure all of the functions happening in that building can happen somewhere else on campus, which that houses a lot of functions, so that it's obviously not impossible. You can figure out, it's like a puzzle, you can figure out the phasing anyway, but that would be a very big challenge for the district.
It's not
And
really
it
possible.
could,
We have 12 classrooms in that building right now, and to displace those, we don't even have enough portables to put those classrooms in. So that is not a possibility, unless we do something with phases and we be creative about what goes into that building.
right, or you would have to bring on more portables.
Yeah.
And
Which would take
possibly
away
lose
open
the
space.
field. Yes, it would,
No space.
it's more about fitting the puzzle pieces in together.
Yeah, I'll do, well, you can finish phasing.
Yep.
We're going to talk about one last thing is, it's been brought to us, there's a security concern about the front of the campus, and particularly the classrooms that are on the far side of the main building. So we talked it up and down and had lots of talks with police and others about this. But what we really know is, we're losing space on a small campus for more general community use that we could potentially use for student use. So we're proposing that on that side of the, there's the main walkway that goes to the front door, but that on that side of it, we install a fence, and the fence runs along the walkway here, and then all the way here, and all the way to the gate for the alley. And we'll remove the middle fence that's there, put a little hedge, but that opens that space up for school use. It expands our perimeter, but also allows it is reversible, which means we are not offending our historic folks. But it does mean we have we create more security, but we also have more usable space.
Outdoor learning centers.
Yes, outdoor learning centers.
Just on the east side.
Right now we're talking about just the east side. We know that there is a community feeling, both of parents who gather in the morning, and a community feeling of others, including the woman who's out there with her dog right now. I hope she picks up the poop. That is part of the
The makerspace, or the
main look.
the main master plan.
Okay.
Questions?
Questions?
Can I say what I want to say, because I think you'll be.
Yes.
Are we in that state?
Yes.
Yes,
Questions,
say you need to
comments?
say you need to feed your kids, and let's say it very quickly, because I also have dinner plans.
The intersection of Idaho and 25th. And I also want to consider myself as a reliable person who does valet. And I just want to say that once you get into the ingredients in the menu or whatever, I love that use of language, there might be a really, really serious problem with drop-off. Little kids do not just hop off of their parents' cars. Kids and parents do not come on time to school. You really, really have to take that whole 2 blocks and 25th into great consideration when you think about the flow of the school population from Idaho, and it's probably going to be Idaho.
Yeah. We
Because
completely
right
agree,
now,
and we will.
right now, I'm not sure if you know, but we have 3 entry points.
Yes.
We do.
Actually, 4 entry points, and 3 of them are closer to our town.
Yes.
So what, in this program, in this design, it's basically shifting 90, I would say 5% to Idaho, to 1 block in Idaho.
What we like about this is we really like getting the youngest children, the TKs and Ks, away from Montana. We also, I mean, I'm just saying, we know this is an issue. It is one of the things we do like about this. The other thing we like about it is I like flipping their play yard rather than being exposed to Montana to being more contained. It's a big, but I agree with you. No, this is a challenge. So here's the guy with the big hand up. Okay.
Let me just share like a possible resolution to that, because I've thought about that too, because getting 600 plus kids like drop off and picked up, what we can do is consider a scheduled time block where maybe TKK starts at 8:45.
Right, but for the people that live in
Yeah.
that time, I would love, like, I don't want to rely on, the goodwill of, 15 years down the road, saying we do have budget to open 2 gates, or we don't have budget to open. I really would love that to just,
Well, to be honest, it's not about budget to open 2 gates. We have one entry point like down on Idaho for safety reasons. You can't have multiple points.
no, because you need to pay a person to be at the gate.
Well, no, but a lot of it is safety. If you talk to Santa Monica Police or any police department, the more entrances you have available and exits on campus, the more opportunity you give for people that are kind of nutso out there to get on campus. So it is, there's some security issues, personnel issues, but we can manage that by starting TKK a little bit later, so there's not the whole school. TKK is about 1/6 of our school, so we can have them start, because they get out early as it is. So there could be a consideration for them to start at 8:45 and 9 o'clock, whereas the rest of the school starts at 8:30.
And
I'm throwing that idea
As
out.
long as it's,
But I also have to say, the comment about how parking drop-off and all of that comes, that's a very good CEQA issue. And it's a very good CEQA comment, and it's something that our CEQA people will analyze as part of what we do.
Which is happening when, sorry?
We'll be beginning CEQA in the spring?
Yeah.
Yes.
But you said you did a traffic survey already? Or
We did some traffic study, some look already, but we have to redo it because we have a slightly different plan, and that'll be part of what we do as part of our CEQA
So when you do the
analysis.
study though, do you come at 8:15
Yeah.
in the morning and watch how like the TK kids are still in their car seats and don't jump out, and mom and dad come out and they cry, and you see
Right.
them,
And then
they
they
stop, and then they stop the
They
traffic
race
and
around,
then 5
they walk
minutes and
the
everybody's.
alleyway.
Right, yeah.
and then the annoying parents from
Park
the
it
back,
out,
they like
my
sing, they just let
I
their
mean, it
kids.
gets a little, it gets volatile.
Julian.
So what you're saying
People coming
is that it
from-
looks like an elementary school between about 8 o'clock to 8:40 every day, and then again about 2:50.
Well, I think yes and no. There's concern, the concern is valid, like.
No, I know, I'm not trying to
We
belittle
don't have
it.
a carpooling for TKK, and people double park and triple
We know that.
And jaywalk, it becomes a safety.
Okay, we know that, and the important thing that Julian's about to say is, that's why we have traffic consultants who know elementary schools, who will come and do this analysis.
So, but we will, especially because we are shifting parking, and this wasn't as important in the original document because the parking lot was essentially staying the same. But we will, as part of the scope of, we'll do a pedestrian safety because this is also part of the first phase. Also, before the city, because the city's going to have to get an, or the, I'm sorry, the district will be required to get an encroachment permit to put this parking lot in. The city will also require a detailed safety study and recommendations for crosswalks and things of that nature. So it's not, and this is one of the few times when the city actually has a little bit of say in what the district does. So that part will be done. It will be part of the CEQA document. It will be available for you all to see. And I wasn't trying to be glib, but I've got 2 children and I have had to drop my kid off at 8 o'clock and get to a meeting at 8:30 in downtown LA, and it just doesn't, so yes.
When you guys do this, please consider right now that the alley's locked. And as soon as this happens, that alley's going to be up for open. So it may make sense to close the alley on Hideout rather than close the alley on Taylor. Because if not, everyone's going to close down on it too. So when you guys do traffic safety, please be aware I'm not going to see any cars going down that alley as soon as that gate's open.
Yeah. The traffic engineers who we hire, who are highly skilled in this question, will look into that and we'll consider it. Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to get clarification, so vis-a-vis CEQA, it'll be private traffic consultants, vis-a-vis the city of Santa Monica, it'll be Department of Transportation that would do the city side of the traffic study?
Actually, they'll probably use the traffic study that we prepare.
Yeah.
The city will rely on the traffic study that
Yes.
the district prepares, okay?
Yes.
And that will be private, that's
Yes.
not.
Well, I mean, it is someone the school district hires to do a traffic study, but it's a qualified traffic, engineer who takes that look as part of it. Just like with CEQA, it's, we have minimal control over how they write their reports. We just hire the best company and trust that they do good work. Yes.
I just have one question, your analogy of setting the table, right, which I like, that's a good one. So when we're setting the table and we have 11,000 square feet, I saw on your slide in that front building and going back to that one. Why are we setting the table where we're trying to get 600 students into like a 4x4 square, where we're setting the table where we could have a larger table which allows more flexibility in where the classrooms would be? I mean, I think it's silly not to try to see what we can do about this front building, whether it's maintaining the facade or bringing it down. They've done it at SAMO, that starts a precedent. I think there will be some community members who want it to stay, but I think there can be a lot of us who are very vocal that we want it down because it doesn't meet the educational needs of today. And really it's the students that count, as well as like all the environmental issues that come along with it and the costs of rehabbing versus starting fresh and meeting the best needs of our residents, our students today. Let's set a larger table that our design team has to work with rather than saying like we've got 11,000 square feet allocated to administrative and other supports. I know we're going to use this space. It's just not the best use of 11,000 square feet. And it'll allow them to design something different. They're limited by a footprint. If we open the footprint, let's see what they can do.
Okay, give me a moment and I'm going to be really blunt.
Yes.
This campus planning process is more than a year delayed, and actually it's more than 3 years delayed, but every campus planning process we did got delayed for a couple of years. We're going out for a bond in November of '24, and we need to know what the first project is here at Franklin. We need to know that this fall. The board has to approve something. This fall, if we're going to get onto the line, we think a great first step is this TK casements. It's a good first step, and it leaves a lot of other options of what we might do. For CEQA, we have to say, here's our whole plan. We're required to say, here's our whole plan. What we build will change. Put your fingers in your ear, Julian.
There's a process for that?
There's a process for that, because that's what happens. Every time you do a campus plan, you don't fully build it out. This morning and yesterday I was having conversations about, we're at a certain point at Samuel High that we're going to change phase 4 of the entire campus plan. And so how are we going to turn it around and change it, and what we're going to make decisions? Because we made great decisions 5 years ago, but now we're in a different place. We have different needs, we have different sets. I think this is a good first move. We need this to move forward to make this first good move. Then, if y'all want to come in and say, hey, let's take down that big building, the reality is that's not where we would start, even if we started, because it has too many classrooms. We would need to build this and at least a good chunk of that bar building, 2-story bar building, or something, to make enough classrooms to begin thinking about doing something up there. Because that's just the phasing. If we're going to still keep a working school, that's what it's going to take. Yes?
Hi, so I live on the corner of 25th and Monica. And there are 5 units with 2 cars each.
Yeah.
So I'm parking lot girl, but I am wondering if, and it's probably the traffic guy, the routing can be reconsidered. I don't love it, all these cars coming at each other, in and at each other, and the cars come real fast around the corner. I do think Montana, I realize it's a busy street, but there is a light right there that stops traffic occasionally. I think that would be considered. So my things are like routing, will we be able, that's CEQA, routing CEQA, and then it's all well and good with all these bushes that you have planted here. This is a big change. It's the only parking lot of its size on all of Montana except for pavilions, right? So, can we, how do we ensure that they're actually going to be planted and not just in the drawing but not reality? And then I have one more thing. Oh God, I'm going to forget. Oh, locking it on the weekend. I know this one is not locked because it's the sports yard. We do get people idling there a lot in the wee hours doing a range of things, most of which are benign, but still, is there a way to ensure it's locked so it doesn't become just like a public parking lot?
Okay, I can tell you about that other parking lot, and those things you're worried about happening don't happen.
Right, they don't happen there, but it's not as visible, so,
Oh, it's pretty visible.
It's private, we can lock it.
Right.
There's no obligation to have it open. There's not even an obligation to have it open for the playground partnership, because parking is not a part of our city playground partnership.
Okay.
These are definitely other things to mention in the CEQA, because these are environmental quality issues.
Right.
Then putting those in will be definitely things for us to ask and discuss, and we'll put it
And I
into
think the
this
hedges
discussion.
would, dissuade people from using it and, make it not as obvious that it's there. It's like, this is a great spot. And I know they don't do that there. I watched. I walk around all the time and notice that doesn't happen there, but it's no much to me.
Yeah, no, it'll be different.
Yeah.
It'll be a different
And
experience.
it's not an alley on the street, it's just different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great, thanks.
Want to take a few more questions? I have to walk out at 7 o'clock, and that's 5 minutes away. So, yes.
So, when you're talking about this classroom education on these facilities that are going to call zoning, like what I'm seeing with this is, yes, we get the new classroom space, and I'm assuming they're going to be kitted out with all the great technology. But we're not getting the new technology community spaces, the new library, or the maker space. And I'm a little worried that, this whole phase of these kind of multi-purpose, like learning spaces, the make space, we're gonna build that, but we're only gonna build that by the time that's completely outdated.
So that's why it's important that we look at this as phases, because in 8 years from now, we may decide as a community, like, the makerspace is no longer needed. Now we need something different.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, I do like the idea that we're bringing in phases, because what we currently need is we need to fix this TKA area and get a new field and a parking lot. So looking down the line, like you said, Samuel High is changing their phase 4. That will most likely happen here. It's going to be based on need. Also, looking in the future, we're projecting now where our enrollment is, but it may go down or it may go up. We don't know. So that may shift some things as well.
Yeah.
So right now we just need to look at what can we do currently, and currently we're looking at phase 1.
I do see that, but I would like to say it could be pushed that, and unfortunately it's, the kitchen cafe that is obviously situated there. But like if it would be different if it was, maybe the music flex space that came onto the field, that we could get something out of phase 1 that would benefit the current pupil population
Yeah.
before our kids will age out.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, our biggest challenge is, you know, the new standard for TK, which is a whole new grade we're adding, and kindergarten really is that we have 1,350 square foot classrooms with restrooms, and we don't have anything like that at all. We don't have anything even beginning to meet that standard. That's why, I mean, it's not just here. We're doing, you know, at Grant we have a plan, at Roosevelt we have a plan, because TK is coming. It's coming faster than we can build. But that's the driver, you know. And yeah, I get it. It'd be great if we could do one other big thing, you know. Yeah.
So I think all of us here love and care for Franklin. I stepped into this building in 1981, just 42 years ago this year. And I think none of us have TK or K kids that are going to be using this.
Yeah.
Some of us are neighbors, some of us are current parents. And I think what you guys have tried to make clear, which is the first step, is the TK to K field in the parking lot. That's what we're all talking about now. In the future, we're all going to be around. Some of us may, some of us may not. And then we're going to hash everything out. So I think what you guys has done, I think it's a great first step. I think you guys are working with us as a community. I have my own issues that a lot of this was done with COVID, but that's water in that relation. And moving forward, thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you very much for caring about this. Thank you for choosing the appropriate first step. Thank you.
That was a great job.
Last things to say? 3 minutes before everyone else speaks.
Just talking about, I guess, the contractors and the whole process, like what goes into keeping our kids safe, you know, do you speak to some of that? I mean, I assume these contractors have experience with this type of work in those spaces. I mean, are there certain guidelines for how that's managed and how these areas are closed off so that children are kept safe?
Yeah. Yeah, we will definitely, you know, we'll close off those areas. We'll get done as much as we can in the summer. A lot of the dirty, nasty, more dusty stuff we try to knock out in the summer. It's like demo, we try to knock it out in the summer. Then we'll fence in this area. We'll control that access just for them. We'll make sure that it's safe around. We're pretty good at doing this. We have a whole plan of safety to make sure that it happens. This first one, first bit is relatively easy construction because it's on the perimeter of the campus. Even the bar building will be relatively easy, even though it's narrow to build. When we get it to the stuff that's in the middle, it's going to be ugly, but we can't help that because at some point you have to do the stuff in the middle. So, but still we negotiate it and we figure out how to do it best. Yes.
So, Carrie, a lot of us that border the alley, we have a lot of problems where they'll close one side of the alley and they'll lock it. On a weekend, it's left like that. We have no egress, ingress. And I'm very concerned that when we start the construction of the bottom side, the Idaho side, that they're going to block parts of the alley. We won't be able to get our cars in and out. That is a real problem, okay? I understand, I think the kindergarten space and the TK, I think that's a great idea. I really like that idea. I also like the staggered drop-off times. There really needs to be staggered drop-off times, okay? But we need to make sure that we are able to get out of our garages and get to work, okay? So the end of the alley, we need assurance that there's a number to call where somebody can come and help us, or that it's always open at one end, okay? I mean, that is really a major problem for us.
So 3 parts. That will definitely be part of the CEQA, and anything you want to say on CEQA, make sure you put it. We'll put those things into the agreement. There will be a construction manager.
Will you email us, by the way, when we are able to communicate on that?
Yeah, we can do that. The next thing, actually, because you live within a certain 500 square, you're going to get a nice postcard telling you all about it. But there will be a construction manager that we hire that is responsible for all of that. You will be able to have his number, her number, to call them at any time whenever there's a problem going on with construction. And right now, I'll give you Kevin Klaus's phone number. Because Kevin is our deputy bond manager who oversees everything in Santa Monica, and he would be available.